Hey everyone, Harry here to talk a little bit about the aftermath of the unbelievable, ridiculous, tawdry, nasty, cynical performance by the Attorney General of the United States, Pam Bondi, at yesterday's oversight hearing, her first since having been confirmed, during which, among other things, she promised she would never bring a politically motivated prosecution. She promised she would do certain reports, etc. And she's proceeded in the months since to ruin the Department of Justice, politicize the Department of Justice, break every norm and constitutional standard in the book. So she might have expected, she clearly did expect a fairly contentious hearing, and she planned for it in a way that is just fairly disgusting when you think of her as a public officer. This is a oversight hearing where Congress has a solemn responsibility in the name of the American people, not to satisfy Schiff or, individuals, but for the American people to do oversight on the Department of Justice. This Department of Justice has all kinds of problems that require oversight, and she came into it obviously armed to not answer. She bobbed and weaved and evaded no fewer than 14 different topics. 5 or 6, she simply said, I won't discuss that with you. If it were within a country mile of anything the president might have said. 3 or 4 of those were semi-legitimate, but the others not. But then every single other, she came in, like all proud of herself, with a ruck bag full of nasty, personal, complete non sequitur insults to various senators along the lines of, how long have you been beating your wife? Senator Blumenthal asked a question, her supposed answer, how dare you ask me that when you evaded your draft obligations? So, a total non sequitur and totally non-responsive. White House asked a question about the home and money. I'll get back to that in a moment. How dare you do that when you take dark money from an affiliate of Jeffrey Epstein? So all of these, she was sneering and really just complete immature third grade stuff. This is her solemn responsibility, of course, to permit oversight. And she basically, and I think she and the White House were kind of proud of her for this. Not that I don't think it takes very much effort, as I wrote in my Substack about that this morning, where I have a lot more to say about her. It just takes a hypertrophied spleen. She just gets in there and resolves in advance. I'm not going to say anything. I'll just be a nasty puppet for Donald Trump. So it's somewhat in the Kavanaugh confirmation mode, but I mean, just really puerile and nasty, not giving any information at all and substituting for it literal, personal insults. I've been involved in preparation for certain oversight hearings by high-level officials, including the Attorney General and the Department of Justice. They are really serious affairs. If you take your constitutional obligations with any seriousness, it is a really important thing. You spend days, you get all the details, you give, if there are things you can't respond to, you figure out why not. If there's things that are going to be unfair gotcha questions, maybe you think about that a little. But this, I've never seen anything remotely like it. She came in determined to not only to be non-responsive, but to be non-responsive by being nasty and savage and bare teeth, and I guess you could say Trumpian. She completely turned around any question and made it a matter of personal insult, completely irrelevant personal insult of Democrats. I thought Schiff had the right kind of view here. Some people showed their exasperation, even a few showed their dander. Schiff, treated her like the joke and vulgarity that she is, and just kind of, didn't listen as she did her little insulting filibusters, and then, served up other questions. Okay, so I mentioned maybe a couple of things are legit not to talk about, but again, on repeated occasions, she talked about things a little, and then all of a sudden she shut down a very good one that I think could actually have been a mistake she made. She basically gave, honestly, zero substantive responses, with a small exception in the case of Tom Homan. Now, you'll recall in the fall, the Justice Department under Biden, but it's got nothing whatsoever to do with Biden, nothing whatsoever to do with Garland. It's the FBI chief. We're doing a sting operation, and into their net saunters Tom Homan. They're not trying to go after him, but he's set up and totally takes the bait of $50,000 in a bag in order to give sweetheart deals, or so he thinks, on border security when he becomes the border czar, as he did become. Mind-blowing. A very high-up servant who just took $50,000 in a bag, and there's a tape of this. But within the first few days of the administration, Emil Bove, his name came up at the hearing, and Bondi said, "That's Honorable Third Circuit Judge Emil Bove to you," with her sneering contempt. Basically squelched the case, and it went away. Now, it is inconceivable. I was going to say implausible, but inconceivable. You get a high-up person taking $50,000 in a bag. They let him. This is, already very unusual and bespeaks a further investigation. They let him walk out with the money in the bag. So that has to mean they wanted to see if he would, spend it, or would he, there's also possible structuring bank laws he would break. There's taxes. What did he do with it? And we still don't know where the money is. So you had Bondi offer up these teasers of professionals looked at it and said he had done nothing wrong. The idea just from what we know, of course he did things wrong. He took $50,000 in a bag as a bribe to try to do good things. There may be some arguments they'll want to eventually have recourse to about, well, there'd be a hard legal claim to make or whatever, but the notion that he's done nothing wrong. Anyway, she starts there and then shuts up, and she's asked a question that, astonishingly, she has to know she'll get, and she just can't answer. And it's, where's the money? You let him take $50,000 in a bag. You suppress the case. Where's the money? And at first, she had this, again, contemptuous, you'd have to ask the FBI that. And the senator quite rightly said, "Excuse me, Madam Attorney General, the FBI works for you. I'm asking you, you're here now. Where's the money?" And she very cleverly said, "You'll have to ask the FBI that." The subject came up again, though, and she did talk about, the people had decided. But then she was asked, almost as an aside, do you know if there's a tape or not? Just know if there's a tape, because many outlets report there is. Many have heard it, but they've never confirmed a DOJ. And she says, and I think sloppily, no. But she says, she gives that answer. And I'll just mention this. It's a complete departure from her whole strategy for the hearing. She actually gives something, and, something's wrong with that answer. If you have actually determined, and how can you not, that there's no reason to pursue the case, how in God's name can you not know if there's a tape? It's just inconceivable. If, on the other hand, there's a tape, you just perjured yourself to the Senate. So I don't see the Homan thing going away. There's all these outlets that have heard the tape or whatever. He's tried to sort of lie low of late, but $50,000 in a bag on a tape, he takes it with him. That's not going away. All right. So that's her one kind of screw up, I think. Otherwise, it was this, just completely bare teeth contemptuous. You could see she and the White House were kind of proud of themselves. Like, it takes a lot of skill to just say, fuck you 36 times. And I just want to end a little where I started. It's an oversight hearing. It's a grave constitutional responsibility, and the beneficiaries of it are the American people. So the level of contempt I think she is a patent lightweight. Some terrible things at DOJ, and she'll be remembered as such. If the Republic survives, her portrait will gather dust in the basement. But she's almost a cartoon character, sort of a tack dog. If it weren't her, it'd be somebody else. I don't want to make the mistake of seeing her as the big villain. She's just there to, totally please Trump, ignore her constitutional responsibilities. She even has the first idea about them. But what she shows is an administration absolutely indifferent to accountability, absolutely indifferent to separation of powers, absolutely indifferent to constitutional feedback, even as, by the way, it insists on deference from the other branches. So that's the bigger lesson, and she is a sort of ridiculous supporting player in it. That's how I see it and how I've written it in today's Substack. Talk to you later. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this video and other Talking Feds content, please take a second to like and subscribe. Talk to you later.